Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial by Zebra Code. In this tutorial we are going to look at inheritance in C++. This is a continuation for the previous tutorial, which was on classes and objects introduction. A class constitutes the fundamental unit of OOP system. In this context, inheritance is a vital topic in the process of discussing object-oriented programming or object-oriented systems. Inheritance is a process or mechanism that allows attributes and responsibilities of one class to be passed on to another class in object-oriented design or in object-oriented programming. In other words, one class takes on the attributes and behaviors of another class. The class taking on the attribute of another is called the subclass, while the attributes and behaviors are being inherited from is called the superclass. There are different ways in which an object can inherit from another object or another class in object-oriented design. There are different ways we specify them, and they have a different access modifier. Here we specify the name class, and the derived class, and access specifier base class. For example, this is for the postgraduate class. We say here now class postgraduate. Then public student. What that means is the postgraduate class is inheriting from the student class, which is a public class. We are defining the postgraduate class here, and at the same time saying that it is going to inherit from this class. So the student class is the base class, while the postgraduate class is the derived class. This is just one class inheriting from another class, but it is more than that. A class can inherit from more than one class, and this line here in green color illustrates that. We specify here the name of the class, which is International Conference, and is inheriting from the master's class, which is a public class, at the same time inheriting from the PhD class. So this is multiple inheritance, while this is a single inheritance. There are different ways the derived class can access the base class, and that leads to access modifier. We have three major ways of specifying access, or specifying the way a derived class will access the base class. Here we could say it is public, private, or protected, and there is another access modifier method which is for the friend. I will come to that later. So in C++, by default, the private is the access method. If you do not specify public, everything will be set to private. Access control and inheritance in C++. In C++, a derived class can access all public members of a base or parent class. What we mean by parent class is the same as a base class, while a derived class can be called the child or the children classes. So the main thing to understand here is that the base class is the parent class, while the derived class is the child class. If the derived class inherits everything from the base class, what is made public in the base class is what the derived class can access. We will see that in a minute. Here is the same diagram we looked at in our previous tutorial. The class student is the prototype, or is the base class in which now objects are being created. This is a diagram of class inheritance. Here we have the student class, which is the base or parent class, and we have three classes here. Student can be a part of a foundation program, or an undergraduate program, or a postgraduate program. A student could be a foundation program. In some countries, foundation means the program you do before you actually qualify for an undergraduate study. These students on foundation programs are still students, so they share some attributes of the student class. Then the undergraduate student shares some attributes of the student class as well, while the postgraduate student also shares some attributes of the student class. Whatever is public here, they will definitely inherit them, at the same time be able to access them. But what is private can only be accessed by a member of this class. So a derived class cannot access private members of a based class. Looking at some signs here, you can see that these ones have got some plus signs. Those plus signs indicate that these attributes are public. There is one here that has a minus sign. That means that this attribute is private. So members of these classes, these three classes, will not be able to access the private behavior or the private attribute of this student class. And look at the postgraduate class again. There are two other classes inheriting from the same postgraduate class. The PhD student is inheriting from the postgraduate student class. The master's student class is inheriting from the postgraduate student class. So the student class here is the base class or parent class, while the foundation, undergraduate, postgraduate, master's, and PhD classes are the derived classes, or you could call any of them the child class. I said earlier that a class can inherit from a single class, and a class can also inherit from multiple classes. This is an example of a multiple inheritance in C++. In this case, the international conference class is inheriting from both the master's class and the PhD class. Now, with this out of the way, let's programmatically represent this, like we did in the previous example where we created a class and derived some objects from it in C++. Now we are going to use C++ to also write our code in which some classes will inherit the attributes and behavior of another class, which is the student class. All right, having explained inheritance, now we are going to actually program our application with the student class and inherit from it through the foundation, undergraduate, and postgraduate classes in C++. We will be using the Qtc's text editor. Any text editor will be fine. All right, now I am on Qtc's creator. This is the same file that we used before for the classes and objects. Let's run it to see exactly how it was then. Yes, these are the objects that we created from the student class. Okay, but now we are going to modify this file by deleting some parts of it. I'm going to delete all the objects that we instantiated earlier on. Now it will look like this, and this is the file that we have now that we're going to be working with. Let's add a string to it, include string. Okay, and here we are going to remove the destructor. This time around I will just comment it out. Okay, now we are going to create another class. And here in our file we have the foundation class, undergraduate class, postgraduate class. They are all inheriting from the student class. So let's create the foundation class to demonstrate inheritance. To do that, I'm going to create a new class foundation, and it is going to inherit from a public class student. All right, now we have a class for the foundation students, and that class is inheriting from the student class. In other words, all the attributes and behaviors that are set here as public will automatically be inherited by the foundation class from the student class. I'll just say here, do something. We've not really entered anything else. So let's demonstrate it to see that what is inherited is actually accessible. To do that, I will create a new object here for the foundation class. Object foundation. See the pointer here. fd equals new foundation. fd dot set first name Jackie. fd dot set last name Williams. fd dot set student ID 444992. fd dot set gender put female there. fd dot set course she's studying marine engineering. fd dot set nationality put Australian there. fd dot set status, set status true, she's enrolled. Now study mode, fd dot set study mode full time. fd dot set GPA 3.1. That's fine. So now let's access it, print on screen, see out, first name. fd.get first name, see out, last name, see out, student ID, fd dot get student ID. The next one there is gender. fd dot get gender, and the next one there is course, see out, fd dot get course, and the following one there is nationality, see out, fd dot get nationality, status, see out, id.getStatus. Study mode is the next. Cout fd.getStudyMode. And the last one there is for the GPA. fd.getGPA. That is it. Now we have created an instance of the foundation class which is inheriting from the student class, and we are going to run it to see if it's working well. Build. Yes, it was successfully built. Now let's run it. Great, everything is running well. So let's fix a few things there. Here we can actually enter variable string. I'll call it ln for line equals semicolon there. Now we can call that line as well. Cout ln. I am going to put an end line here as well. Okay, let's build it. Done successfully. Now let's run it. Great. So everything was printed out successfully. First name Jackie, last name Williams, student ID 444992, gender female, course marine, and so on. These are the details that we entered for that student. Inheritance here shows that when one class inherits from another class, it takes on all the attributes and behaviors of the class that is inheriting from. So it is inheriting from the student class, and all these things, all these attributes here are set to public. If we look at our design here, one of them, GPA, is set to private. Now if we change it to private, will we still be able to access it? What I mean by that is, here for the GPA we can set it to private. So we can come over here, study mode. For GPA we can say something as private. So we are already getting error messages because GPA now is set to private. It's not set to public anymore. Whatever a class inherits from another class, what it can access has to be public. If it is set to private, it cannot access it. I mean, a derived class cannot access a private member of a class. So if I set that one again to public, it should be able to access it. I'm going to remove this private access specifier. So everything now is again working well. So this is how you inherit from one class in C++. We have used the foundation class now to specify that this class is inheriting from the student class. There is another multiple inheritance that we mentioned earlier. So let's try that with the postgraduate student and the master's and PhD students. Okay, now let's create a class for the postgraduate student and inherit from it through the master's and PhD student. Here I'm going to create another class postgraduate, and it's inheriting from the student class. Public student. Great. Now the postgraduate class has inherited everything from the student class, but we want to inherit from the postgraduate class as well. In other words, all the attributes and behaviors of students are automatically available to the postgraduate student, but the postgraduate student might have some features that the student class does not have. And to do that, we can say here again, public string sat int duration. Now let's quickly add the setters and getters. Void okay, here void set certificate string sat this dot set sat. Here we can say now string get certificate return. That's fine. So here we've said void set certificate string sat equals sat string get certificate return certificate. And we can do the same thing for duration. Void set duration equals duration. Tackle there, fine. Now let's get it. Int get duration return duration. Great. Int. That should fix that problem for us. Okay, here we have said void string certificate string get certificate. Here void set duration int and integer get duration. These are attributes of the postgraduate class. Now the master's class is going to inherit from the postgraduate class. Class masters public, and it's going to inherit from the postgraduate class, and it will also inherit from the student class. Public. All right, what we have here now is this: the class master is inheriting from the postgraduate class and also inheriting from the public student class. So there is a problem here. The problem here is the postgraduate student class is already inheriting from the student class. So we don't really need to specify student anymore because all the attributes of the student class are already available to the postgraduate class. All right, so now I am going to quickly instantiate an object of the master's class. To do that, we can just do something quickly here. Say, okay, masters. I'm going to also use a pointer there. MS for masters. New masters. MS dot set duration. Duration is integer. In some countries it's 1 year, in some countries it's 2 years. I'll put 2 there. MS set certificate masters of science MSc. Okay, now let's access it. See out program duration, ms get duration, and the second one there is certificate awarded, that will be ms dot get certificate. Then quickly see out again end line, see out line, end line. Fine, let's build it. Now let's run it. Great, everything was compiled successfully and run successfully. So program duration 2, certificate awarded, Masters of Science, MSc. This is how we use multiple inheritance and single inheritance in C++. So in our code here, just a quick run through, we just created a class here, Masters, which is publicly inheriting from the postgraduate class. So the postgraduate class has these attributes. We didn't have to specify it again specifically for the Masters class. It inherits it from the postgraduate class. So this is how you use single inheritance and multiple inheritance in C++. I hope you've learned something from this video. If you have learned something from it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and see you again in the next tutorial.